Hello, everyone! Today we're going to talk about Tales of Zestiria, Street Fighter V, and WWE2K16, believe it or not. But first, Rodea the Sky Soldier, the new game from R.Mika, head guys behind Sonic. He kind of left Sonic Team a while back, has been making fishing games, and back in 2011, he decided to kind of make his new Sonic, Rodea the Sky Soldier, which was supposed to come out on Wii and was completed in 2011, but the publisher said, nah, let's not, because, it was 2011, nothing was selling on Wii. Like, it's weird, though, the Wii's the system that everyone owned, but nobody played. So, so they were like, no, we're not going to release it, even though the game is done, and then, like, a couple years later, they said, hey, let's port it to 3DS, and while we're at it, let's port it to Wii U. And so the publisher was actually the one doing the porting. And R.Mika was like, so, hey, you guys, you think you could, like, include the Wii version with the Wii U version, like, as an option, since it's completed and you're making all these changes? And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll do it as, like, they compromised. They were like, sure, first print run bonus. You get the first print run, it comes with the Wii version. R.Mika has taken to Twitter to beg people to please play the Wii version of the game. Now, I had mentioned in a previous video that I'd heard the Wii version was better than the Wii U version, but I thought it was just, it was a bit more colorful, ran a little smoother, had slightly different controls. I didn't expect the difference to be night every freaking day. The Wii version of Rodea the Sky Soldier is amazing. It is the Sega-est thing you will play. It's Sega as fuck. It is amazingly Sega-ful. And super fun and really enjoyable. You're flying through the sky. The controls are simplistic and intuitive. It's super fun. It looks pretty. It runs well. Meanwhile, the Wii U version looks like ass. It actually looks worse. It runs worse. Like, it drops to sub 30 as soon as the game starts. The controls are confusing and overcomplicated. It's slower. It's unnecessarily overcomplicated. It is baffling as fuck. Like, the difference between the two games is huge. And the worst part is that if you bought the game digitally, then guess what? That means you only get the shitty Wii U version. And of course, there's no way you can return it. So if you buy the digital version of Rodea the Sky Soldier, you get screwed. So I feel super bad because there's a bunch of people who, like, buy their games digitally now and who will look in the Nintendo shop and be like, oh, hey, here's a new game I've never heard of. Let's try it. And they'll wind up with a piece of crap. Worse still is the fact that this is, of course, the one that's being sent to reviewers, and it's getting 4 out of 10s across the board, which I agree with. The difference between Rodea on Wii U and 3DS is the difference between a 4 out of 10 and, like, an 8 out of 10. I'm not even kidding. The difference is that huge. If you're wondering how it plays the game, is kind of like a combination of Sonic Adventure and Knights set in Skies of Arcadia and starring the guy from Pokemon Coliseum as Mega Man. That's how I like to describe it. Basically, the whole thing is designed to be played with the Wiimote. Not the Wiimote and Nunchuck, the Wiimote. It's all pointer-based. What you do is you point at where you want to go, you hold the B button to lock onto it, and then you shake in the direction you want to fly. Now, here's the thing. This works perfectly fine. Because it's not gyroscope based. It's all pointer based. When you hold the B button, it says, okay, that's the central point, and then it detects where that cursor moves, like what direction it leaves that central point from. That's the direction you fly in. When I say the direction you fly in these arcs. So if you go to the right, you arc to the right. If you go to the left, you arc to the left. You can arc up, arc down, arc at any of the diagonals, because it's the angle you leave that center point at, and it feels supernatural and awesome, and mid-flight, you can lock onto another point and shake and start flying to that point. You, like, never have to touch the ground. You could just keep clicking on points and flicking in different directions and flying around freely through the skies. And if you want to attack an enemy, You start flying towards them, lock onto them, flick. As you're flying towards them, hold the A button, and you'll start spinning, and you'll do this spin attack. It's like they took Sonic's homing attack, mixed it with Knight's, and made it aimable. And some other Sonicisms, like the light speed dash, it's there. Like, they have these little coin metal things, they're called gravitons. If you approach them at the right angle, then you will automatically zip through them, like, super fast. It does have, like, the boost things. There's even, like, a Sonic boot power-up that lets you run along the crazy ground boost pads. It's super awesome. It's not perfect, it still has some kind of Sonic-y camera angle wonk, but that's just to be expected a lot of times in, like, a 3D game like this, especially one like this where you have the freedom to just fly around wherever you want to go, It's super nuts, because you're just flying everywhere. It feels amazing. But yeah, with that much freedom, you can get the camera stuck in some positions that it didn't expect. It's a lot like the camera angles in the old Sonic Adventure games. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 especially. If you were able to tolerate the camera angles in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, like, they were hiccupy, but let's be honest here, we all played those games, we all were able to just, we put up with them. If you could put up with some camera angles like that every now and then, just as frequently, then, yeah, this game will be fine. You'll love it. Now, the Wii U version, apparently it's a port of the 3DS version, which is a port of the Wii version, but the point is, that means the textures look awful. And they try to enhance it by, like, slathering it in shaders. They're like, let's add some bloom and some fog, and they try to have this sketch shading thing, but it just makes it look like there's static on everything. And then they try to cell shade the character, and it all comes together to make everything look worse. Like, they apply cell shading to the whole thing, and cell shading looks good when things have, like, really simplistic textures. Here they still have, like, the Wii 3DS textures, so the lighting, like, the cell shading makes it look worse. Everything makes it look worse. Like, they even ruined the 2D portraits. Like, they washed them out and put this gradient over them. You ever see someone just go nuts in Photoshop? Like, they get this perfectly good image, and then they, like, apply a bunch of different, like, filters and lighting effects and put lens flares everywhere, and they turn, like, a perfectly good picture, and they just ruin it with their stupid Photoshop effects. That's the Wii U version of Rodea the Sky Soldier, and they have so many of their stupid Photoshop effects, it ruins the frame rate. The controls are way worse, because what you do, first you have to jump to go into pre-flight mode. Then you hold that button to, like, float there, but you have a limited amount of time to aim the pointer at, aim the camera angle at where you want to go. It doesn't use the Wiimote at all. It's all dual analog, which, for a game that is literally designed around the Wiimote, that's kind of a problem. So, you have a limited amount of time to point where you want to go, otherwise you'll just automatically fly off somewhere. And, once you do, like, there will be this quick boost of speed, and then you'll just glide really, really slowly in this bland, straight line. And you have to be careful, too, because they've just decided to arbitrarily add a fuel system to the game. And just, it's a shit show. Like, on top of that, like, they added the ability to do a quick rise and a quick fall, and there's, like, this charged attack thing, and they put in, like, all these mechanics. Like, there's an upgrade shop, and you can switch gears and do all this unnecessary, stupid crap that I think that tries to enhance the game but only makes it worse. We didn't need an upgrade shop. We didn't need a hit point system. We didn't need a quick rise. This is executive meddling at its finest. This is a bunch of higher-ups saying, what can we do to take this game and make it better? And they just staple things on there. Oh, put an upgrade system on there. Oh, have it so they have to manage fuel, add all these new moves, add these unlockables, slather it with these different shaders. Yeah, that'll make it better. No, all of it makes it worse. Like, they even changed the hit point system. Like, now there's actually hit points, which are kind of pointless. But although I will say, this is one of the things Rodea on Wii could use to explain is the way the damage system works. Because if you get hit, you can no longer attack. Here's the way it works. On Wii, you'll see these, like, glowing... You'll notice that Rodea has this little tail fin thing. There's these glowing tail fins that give them, like, greenish-yellow hair. Grabbing one of those is like a super mushroom. It means you can take an extra hit, and it also lets you fly further. If you get hit with this, you're reduced back to just having your regular tail. If you get hit with your regular tail, it gets destroyed... And now, not only can you fly less far, but you can no longer attack. Thankfully, the tail fin power-ups are scattered all over the place, but they never explain this, so oftentimes I get hit by an enemy, and then I'm like, well, now I'm going to retaliate, and so I fly towards it, and I hold A, and I'm like, what the crap, why can't I attack? They never explained that. I finally realized, oh, it's because my tail is freaking broken. That's what happened. So, like, but in the Wii U version, they just made it a hit point system, which is kind of pointless because the enemies don't provide much of the challenge. Like Sonic, it's the stages that are providing all of the challenge. You can see a lot of this in my video with Viper, and I've gone on way too long with this. I'm sorry, just Rodea, it's nuts, and it's such a shame. No one's talking about this. Like, honestly, you shouldn't have to worry about getting that first print run, because I don't think there'll be a second print run. Seriously, go to Game FAQs. No one is talking about this. No one is playing this. This is getting no advertising, no recognition, nothing. It sounds weird, but it's almost like this should have been on Kickstarter, because in a way, this is Yuji Naka's Mighty Number 9, or whatever, Bloodstained? Was it Bloodstained? The new Castlevania, but not? It's his ukulele. It's his new Sonic, and in many ways it feels like a 3D Sonic, except good, even though it doesn't feel a thing like Sonic. It's very Sega. But I've gone on way too long about Rodea, the friggin' Sky Soldier. Let's move on to Tales of Zestiria. This has to be one of the most divisive Tales of games I have ever seen. Usually new Tales of comes out in Japan, everyone's salivating over it. But Zestiria, not so much, and with kind of a good reason. A part of it is because this is the first Tales of to actually acknowledge the US. At the same time, it's the first one to do free-roaming open world like a Western RPG. Mind you, they've been trying to do that since Tales of Graces, but this is the first one to kind of pull that off, and there's a lot of people who say that it's been quote-unquote casualized because of that. They really need to work on their definition of casualized. No, it's not casualized. It's not casualized at all, but I can see how the open world kind of turns people off, because it winds up... It's kind of cool, actually, because you have this big open field, but it's still Tales of. Like, you see the enemies there, but when you bump into them, the camera zooms in on them, zooms out, and you're fighting them with a typical a semi-typical Tales of battle system. It's Tales of Grace's back view one. Which, yes, even though, like, I know the camera angle makes it look like you couldn't do multiplayer, you can still do the 4-player multiplayer. It's offline as usual, but yes, you can still team up with your friends locally and play the game multiplayer, so that's good. The combat system, as I said, it's pretty much Tales of Graces, so you have the whole, like, when you're doing your standard combo, you can hold different directions to do different move variations. They actually changed the CC system, where you have that limited number of moves you can do. Now it's more of a stamina bar. Like, this is one of those things they've been changing up. Like, in the past, it was just, you can do regular attacks freely, but special attacks cost MP. But, like, hitting with regular attacks refills your MP. That was how it used to work. In a few games, they made it where you can do a certain number of moves before you have to pause and recharge. And it was like a numerical limit. Here, it's a stamina meter, where if you sit there, you guard, and you're not attacking, the meter starts refilling. It refills super quick, but as you attack, it drains, and doing both regular attacks and special attacks drains it. I've heard a few people criticize this because it means you can just spam special attacks like crazy, making regular attacks almost pointless. I've heard a bunch of people criticize the fact that you can go into your transformed state so easily, and that makes battles easier. I'm honestly not that far in enough to make a call. That's because this game's one major crippling flaw, and that's the fact that this is the slowest paced Tales of I've ever played. It's not bad. It's paced a lot more like a standard JRPG. Because Tales of, they usually get you a full party and a full array of special moves, like, really quickly, like, within the first 2 hours. But here, after, like, the game starts up right by, like, starting you in a dungeon, but the dungeon's too small, there aren't nearly enough fights in it, that you spend a bunch of time waffling around in a peaceful city, and just not being able to get into fights, and not leveling up, and not being able to earn anything, or do anything. The intro feels really long, and I think it like, even after you get out of the intro, it fiddles around with your party members. It takes a good while to get a good party of 4 all set up and stuff. I gotta be honest, it kinda seems like the game doesn't even really start until, like, a good chunk of the way through. Honestly, it seems like it'll take until Alicia leaves, which was the other reason why this game didn't garner a lot of hype. Alicia looks like the main female character. She seems really important to the story. Indeed, they were advertising her heavily. They had figures of her, and it quickly turned into sort of the Japanese equivalent of the Mass Effect 3 debacle, because relatively early on, apparently Alicia just walks out of the party with minimal fanfare, and is promptly replaced with someone else, who just comes off as overpowered and random and out of nowhere. Everyone just sits there going like, what the crap, what happened to Alicia? And then Namco reveals, oh, by the way, download the Alicia Story DLC to find out what happened to Alicia. This caused everyone to get angry, and so Namco was like, okay, for the first, like, little while, we'll make that DLC free. Which they're still doing here. Yeah, it's a little awkward. Another thing, I have no clue what to think of that, because Alicia's a little bit bland of a character, but she does seem super important. I haven't gotten to the part where she leaves, but I know that, like, all the characters I actually care about show up after she leaves the party. And I don't consider this a spoiler, because everyone knows Alicia leaves, and I know that she has her own DLC story, so obviously she doesn't get killed, so I don't know what it is that causes Alicia to leave, why, how awkward it is. I haven't gotten there, so I don't feel bad about quote-unquote spoiling that Alicia leaves the party. And then has kind of a replacement character, who I haven't even told you who it is, though a lot of people probably already know. It's a very awkward thing. Honestly, one other weird thing is that the game kind of looks ugly until you clear out an area. Because, like, one of the main things is that, like, this corruption has spread around and darkened the world, and so everything's really gray and washed out until you get rid of the corruption in an area. And then, like, things get bright and sunny and the graphics look way better. I should mention that in Japan, this game is PS3 only. They realized, though, that if they did that in America, the thing would flop, and the game is practically made for America. It's made with America in mind, I should say. I don't think it would have such a strong bromance if it was really made for America, quote unquote. But it was made with acknowledgement of America. So they were like, okay, we really want this to sell well in America. So they did port it to Steam and PS4. Some people have gotten super pissed about the fact that it's locked at 30 FPS. It's 30 FPS on all systems. They say it's because the animations and enemy AI are actually linked to the frame rate. I have not seen what unlocking the frame rate does, but they've said that it winds up ruining things, but playing on PS4 and PC increases the draw distance. I really should look it up. But honestly, I know 60 FPS and 30 FPS is a huge arguing point. There's a lot of people who say you can't see the difference. You can see the difference, but you have to see them side by side, because what you have to remember is that regular TV and movies and stuff is like 25 FPS, okay? Regular television is 24, 25 FPS. So that comes across as smooth. So a video game at 30 FPS comes across as very smooth, very nice. As long as it keeps a solid 30 FPS, it's really hard to notice it. But when something runs at 60 FPS, we register it as super fucking smooth. What's more important, though, is that inputs are tied to frames. You know, when you input a direction or a command or hit a button, that action can't happen until there's a frame to put an animation on, right? So if you have 60 frames per second, that's twice as many chances for the input to be reacted to. And that's the big difference. I thank Maximilian for giving me that explanation, because it's like, okay, that makes sense. If that's the importance of 60 FPS, I get it. But it is one of those things where it's like smoothness is more important than frame rate. Again, remember, this was a PS3 game. It was designed on PS3, and it's a smooth 30, so you don't notice that it's not 60. You really don't, unless you're like a super stickler. Or maybe it's easier to tell on PC, due to the nature of PC monitors or whatever. So moving on to Street Fighter V. When this game was first announced, a bunch of people were asking me, yo, Jell, what do you think of Street Fighter V? What do you think of it? Yo, what do you think of this game? And I looked at it and I was like, just looks like Street Fighter 4 again. You know, it was just Ryu and Chun-Li, so I had absolutely no interest. I mean, my interest in fighting games is based entirely on characters. They weren't showing any characters. And on top of that, I hated Street Fighter 4. See, I really don't like Dimps fighters. I think every fighter Dimps has ever made. They're good at making Sonic games. They're good at making anything that isn't a fighting game. But their fighting games have this weirdly, uniquely stiff controls. And while Street Fighter 4 was one of their better ones, it still felt really stiff. I hated it. It played it too safe. It was too bland. It was too uninteresting. And the Ultra Combo system was stupid. It made me feel bad about winning when I did. I hated Street Fighter 4. Screw that game. It's so bland and dry, and honestly, I think a lot of people feel the same way. You know, they played it because it was Street Fighter. They added in a lot of characters that people liked, but it was just so basic. So I had no interest in Street Fighter V. And then they announced R.Mika, and suddenly I care. I hate Alpha 3, but I loved R.Mika just as a character. I could never play as her, but she was so ridiculous and so over the top. And just such a unique and fun character. And how she's back? Oh, heck yeah. And so I decided, I was sitting there, I've been watching Max's streams, and I'm like, man, wish I could get in on the beta. I didn't pre-order the game. And I was like, wait a second. I can still pre-order the game. Will it still get me beta access? I think it will. So I went out, pre-ordered the game, hopped in, picked R.Mika, and it was a blast. I absolutely cannot believe that Dimps made this game. The controls feel great. They're tight, they're responsive, they're fast, and they they actually simplified, like, they completely changed how R.Mika plays, and that she's way easier to play. Like, that's been one of their main things, is, like, they realize now that they're like, we have to get this game out super fast so we can start making money, and the game's only going to have, like, 15 characters, I think they said, at launch, with, like, bunch of characters coming as possibly free DLC, I'm not sure, but at launch, there's only going to be, like, those like, 15-ish characters, so they have to make them count, you know? They can't just put in a character because, oh, hey, it's a Street Fighter character. It's like, okay, it's got to be a character everyone likes. It has to be one where, if you like them, you can play as them. One of the... You see when R.Mika was, like, first designed in Alpha 3, the idea behind her was that she was going to be a difficult, technical character for, like, more serious, hardcore players to master. And that's, like, a design concept Capcom's had. This is a technical character. You need a lot of skill to use them. But as fighting games have become more about the competitive scene, people have had to start to realize technical characters are dumb. Because it takes so much work to learn to play them, and then when you get to high level, guess what? Like, the easy-to-play characters are the ones dominating everywhere, because you get out of the learning the basics area and into the learning the metagame hardcore stuff. I'm not super, like, hardcore into serious fighting, into, like, tournament-level fighting games, so I'm talking out my ass a little bit, but, I mean, why would you ever learn Q or 12 when you can learn Chun-Li and Ken in Third Strike? In theory, yes, you can win. You can win with Q and 12, but it requires so much skill, so much ability to parry. If you just took that same parrying skill and applied it to just hitting random buttons with Chun-Li practically, you would do much better. So they're starting to realize we should make it so anyone who wants to use this character can learn them. We should simplify everything. I'm surprised Zangief still has 360 motions, because R.Mika has no 360 motions. That's a good thing, because think about it. Who plays grapplers? There are so few grappler players, because grapplers, they're difficult characters to play as. I mean, they're slow, but they're powerful. You have to get in close. They generally don't have much of an air game. So, on top of that, ask for a 360 motion, which is like one of the hardest inputs to get right. Yes, practice makes perfect. But if you screw it up, you jump. If you botch your input, you immediately become vulnerable because of the input and not because of player skill. No one else has to put up with that. Ryu and Ken, they just have their quarter circles, but you had to pick Zangief, and now you're in the air getting Shoryuken because you botched your input, and there goes like 50% of your friggin' HP! It's kinda bullshit. So changing them to half circles? Really, really good call. R.Mika was easier to play than ever before. I also tried out the chargeless Vega, which is something I've always kind of wanted. See, with Vega, I could do the back-forward charge, but he only had one back-forward charge move. Most of his moves were down-up charges, and not sure if you noticed, Vega jumps faster than other characters. He has a really weird jump. He goes up in the air super fast, then he falls to the ground super fast. Like, he has a weird jump. And because of this weird jump, it makes his down-up inputs really hard to do, because he jumps too fast. He'll jump before you can hit up and a button simultaneously. Like, the millisecond up registers, he's jumping and your button doesn't matter, and if you press the button first, then, you'll do, like, the crouching attack instead of the up and that button. Like, the timing on it's just complete BS, and that's the majority of his move list. So a part of me is like, yo, it's kind of stupid that he's not a charge character anymore, because some people like charge characters, but in a way it does make him easier to play. It's very weird, because all his moves are, like, similar, but changed. Like, he doesn't have the flying claw attack anymore, like the one where he just glides across the screen. And he technically doesn't have rolling crystal flash. He has some weird variant on it. But apparently, he's, like, the best. The last beta I played, Vega was the best character in the game. People were just running ham on everyone with him. I tried Rashid, and I am really disappointed that Max won't try Rashid, because he's thoroughly convinced that Rashid is El Fuerte. No. Rashid is Bijane. Like, seriously, I've been joking about the fact that a lot of the new Street Fighter characters are basically SNK characters. Like, seriously, look at C. Viper, look at Jury. Those are SNK characters. But Rashid, he has Bijane's moves. He has a run. He's an SNK character. But he's super fun to play. Like, he's very rush combo-y centric. Like, he has a kick where he flies across the screen, which in the air becomes a dive kick. He can throw out these little tornado projectiles that fly up in the air. He can do these spinny moves. Heck, if you just dash towards your opponent and press weak punch twice, he will automatically do his forward crazy spinny move. So he is super fucking fun to play. I highly recommend giving Rashid a chance. Rashid is definitely a solid, fun character to play. And the netcode? Yeah, the netcode is shockingly good. There was a brief, like, unannounced stress test that they did where Laura became playable, and I did try her. I can't figure her out, but Laura was an interesting character because she's a grappler with a slow-moving projectile, and all of her grapples are like charging moves, like she charges towards the opponent. It was a very strange character that I don't fully understand how you're supposed to play her. But all in all, yeah, Street Fighter V, it's turned out really great. I think this is the biggest change Street Fighter has seen since Street Fighter 3. I really like it. It's way faster. It's way more combo-centric. All the character, everything old is new again. Like, that's how it's like Street Fighter 3, but inversed. Rather than them making a whole cast of new characters, they're going back, looking at every beloved old character that they can get their hands on and saying, what can we do, both design-wise and gameplay-wise, to make this the same character, but fresh and new? And it's really, really interesting and fun. I am absolutely loving it. And it's, of course, at this point, someone's going to ask me about Street Fighter V censorship and what I think of it. And the answer is, I am this close to changing all of my avatars and banners to pictures of R.Mika's ass in protest and keeping them that way until Capcom fixes this. Would that bother anyone if GameBabble just had a cavalcade of R.Mika butts for its banner for a while? Is everyone cool with that? In fact, no matter what Capcom does, if I ever get around to making a new intro for the show, if I ever get around to making new episodes, I'm putting R.Mika's butt slap in there. But enough about that. I mean, honestly, yes, R.Mika sold me on Street Fighter V. The butt slap was brilliant. And so, of course, I care about that. Like, enough that I could actually justify saying pre-order canceled. But let's be serious here. The cami censoring, I don't think is a big deal. I don't even think it's exactly censoring. Like, yeah, we don't get that crotch shot, but if you look, in that pose, the polygons on her legs are stretched super far. It actually looks a little glitchy. The new camera angle that covers up her crotch does cover that up. So, it does kind of look a little bit better. The R.Mika one is much more drastic, because R.Mika is specifically slapping her ass, and yet the camera is showing her face. You can hear the ass slap, but you can't see it. At which point, what is the point of slapping the ass? I've heard people argue, it's so sexualized because the whole screen is just filled with R.Mika butt. Okay, fine. I don't like to compromise, but I will level with you. If you are going to make it where it's not focused on her butt, that's fine, but her butt still needs to be on screen so we can see the ass slap. What is the point of slapping your ass at your opponent if you can't see it? But more than that is the leg spread. That's actually way more important, because without it, it changes the move. That's not just any wrestling move. With the leg spread, that's a Kinniku Buster from Kinniku Man. It's a legendary wrestling move. It is a reference to a specific, TV series and comic. It is a reference to Kinniku Man, also known as Muscles or Ultimate Muscle for the sequel Next Generation series in America. It's a reference to that, and so taking away the whole leg spread thing, which, by the way, that's not just female characters or whatever, that applies to everyone. It doesn't have sexual connotations. It is a reference to Kinniku Man, and taking that out is taking out that reference, and it does reduce some of the awesomeness of the move. Part of what makes that move awesome is you go, oh my crap, R.Mika is doing the Kinniku Buster. That's awesome. And again, what's the point of having the ass slap in there if the camera, if you can't even see it? I think they should just change it back. But, if they just took away the ass slap, well, no. And the interesting thing is, there's actually a few feminists out there who are like, you know what, we're sick of feminism being associated with censorship. This is stupid. Because the ass slap wasn't sexual. I mean, yes, I like R.Mika's butt, but it wasn't sexual. It wasn't like, ooh, come here, get a load of this hot piece of ass. No, that's not what she's doing. She's slapping it she's slapping it and pointing at you, and she's like, you want a piece of this? Bam! I mean, it's R.Mika. Her whole shtick is that she destroys you with her butt. The Flying Peach is her Hadouken. It is her signature move. It is what makes R.Mika R.Mika. She's a butt-based fighter. It's kind of weird, sure, but that's her thing. So her slapping her ass before the super move, that is a sensible taunt. It's a character thing. It can be seen in a sexual way, but it's not really sexual. And as some people have pointed out, at this point you're just censoring out any representations of female sexuality and power within that. I'm sorry to get all political on this, but she's clearly in control here. That is an attack. It is a taunt. She is smacking you with her ass. It's not meant to pleasure the male viewer or opponent. It's, in a weird way, a threat. A very bizarre threat, but it's a threat because she then hits you with her ass because she's R.Mika. That's what she do. So, it's stupid to remove it. If you want to have the camera focus less on it, sure, but don't just cut it out completely. What's the point then? No. And I know people are like, it's not that big a deal, dude, but in a way it is, because, I refuse to let them set a precedent, and I fight for what I believe in, and what I believe in is R.Mika's butt. More than that, a lot of people are running around with this idea that's to avoid getting an M rating from the ESRB. I don't believe that, based on the fact that we've seen so much worse in T-rated games. We've seen a lot worse. I mean, Street Fighter 4 had the camera, focusing on Cammy's butt so much. So I don't see why this would suddenly be a difference unless the ESRB has decided, in the light of all the various events going on, to crack down harder on portrayals of female sexuality, in which case we have a much, much bigger problem here. Because no, R.Mika slapping her ass at you should not be enough to make a game M-rated. That doesn't make any sense at all. And, what does that mean for Yuri Sakazaki? What does that mean for a lot of characters? No, I'm sorry. That does not make a game M-rated. But what's particularly interesting about this is that, I honestly don't think... I haven't really seen any actual women complaining about R.Mika. I've seen a lot of men complaining about R.Mika. There's a lot of men who see that character and they think that this is going to be offensive to women. There's a lot of men who are uncomfortable with R.Mika because she's such a goofy character. But I don't see it a lot out of women. Why? Honestly, I think it's because R.Mika isn't really a sexy character. She's scantily clad, but she's goofy as fuck. She's wearing a silly face mask and has little frills and hearts everywhere. As skimpy as the outfit is, it isn't actually attractive. In fact, I won't lie, I'm kind of excited about DLC costumes because R.Mika, I've seen some fan art and R.Mika looks so much better in just like a t-shirt and jeans. So I'm excited to see what kind of alternate costumes R.Mika can get, but she's not really a sexual character. She flies butt first at you, but she's a joke character. In Alpha 3, when she flies at you, and hits you with her butt. When she lands, she rubs her ass because she hurt her ass throwing it at you. And her win pose has the friggin' Dan Hibiki tears. She's kind of a female Dan, and also the Sakura to Zangief's Ryu. R.Mika is a very weird character, but more than that, I'm not sure if you noticed, R.Mika is not your typical slim, petite female fighter. R.Mika's a big girl. She's kind of thick. Bit of muscle, bit of fat. Kind of the way Japanese female wrestlers are. The ones who really wrestle and aren't divas. Yeah, they're a bit thicker. And that's what R.Mika is. And it's a body type we don't normally see in video games. And people are always wishing that female characters had more varied body types. R.Mika's a grand example. And look at her stance. Again, it's not actually sexual. She's all hunched over. She's in a wrestling stance. She's gonna grab you. She's hunched over. She's ready to grapple. R.Mika is not actually a sexual character when you really pay attention to it. People just think she is because of the amount of skin showing, but she isn't. She really isn't. It's kind of fascinating. And even, the Mary Sue, which is the one site that's actually applauding these changes, they focused on Cammy, because of course Cammy's the one that's the most weird, because she's supposed to be a soldier and she's wearing the skin-tight leotard. It's classic, but it is a little odd, sure. So they focused entirely on Cammy, whose censoring is much more minor, to the point where I could actually consider it more of a bug fix because of the stretched polygons. But while they mention R.Mika, they pretty much just gloss over it. I really think it's mostly men who complain about this. It's a weird phenomenon. A friend of mine told me a story. he went into a GameStop, and the employees were sitting there talking about, how over-sexualized women were in gaming, and making a big deal about all that. And this friend of mine, he goes and he says, I want to buy the Jury controller for Street Fighter 4. And these same two guys look at him and say, that's for girls, right? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that. And you realize how fake so many of these people are. They sit there and they're complaining about quote-unquote sexism and sexualization, when in reality, they're just made uncomfortable by women and the idea of playing as women, and they're trying to cover it up because they don't want to admit this fact. They don't want to play as a girl, they don't like playing as a girl, and they're made really uncomfortable that fellow gamers might be cool with playing as girls. It weirds them out, and so they try to cover it up with this shit. I've seen it enough to know that this is frequently the case. Sorry to get political there. Now it's time to move on, speaking of wrestling, to WWE 2K16, which a lot of people have come up to me and they've said, wow, you're playing WWE? I didn't expect that of you. How is it? I haven't played one since the N64. Well, obviously me and wrestling have a weird history. I played one on N64, and I remember I picked it up because it had custom characters. I tried to make myself in it. I gave myself the Cheesemeister moveset. I got super angry with it because I couldn't figure out how to win a match. I complained about that, so I was like, how do you just pin people? I'm like, how? You press the pin button. Like, what's the pin button? They're like, I don't know, I guess it's B. I mean, as long as you didn't pick Cheesemeister, as I picked Cheesemeister. Oh, well, Cheesemeister doesn't have any pins. So I remember that. But my history with wrestling games is, of course, based mostly around Rumble Roses. I played Rumble Roses. I loved it, but the general consensus was, this is just like every other wrestling game out there, except with less, without the custom characters, and without, 8-player matches, and without all the modes. And I was like, wait a second, so you're telling me I could play Rumble Roses, but with custom characters and 8-player? Sign me up. So I went out and I rented a bunch of wrestling games, and the verdict I came back with was no. But when the 360 PS3 generation came around, I was super excited because I was like, oh, the graphics are going to get so much better, and I can make way cooler looking custom characters, right? No, because they recycled most of their content from the PS2, including the animations, and the animations were terrible. If Rumble Roses did one thing right, it was that the animations were really nice and smooth. But here, the customs look like toys. They look like action figures. They look completely out of place next to the real wrestlers. And they trundle around the arena just bobbling into each other like action figures. And so I couldn't get into the previous generation of wrestling games. I rented a couple of them. And I know that after 2010, they all wound up being the same game but with less content. And then we entered the dark age of DLC and online passes. Apparently, 2K14 had the best customization, but then 2K15 happened, and that was kind of the reboot of the franchise, where they're like, okay, we need to retool everything in order to put this on Xbox One and PS4. We need to redo our visuals, we need to redo our customs, we need to redo everything. I was like, oh, that's super cool, I want to try this, except I found out that the Xbox One PS4 version of it had no custom female characters. Obviously, I'm here for a new Rumble Roses, so I was like, screw that, maybe next year if they have custom females. Guess what? As you can obviously tell, we have custom females. How's the customization? It's interesting, because they give you... You have a lot of customization, like options and things you can do. In fact, they added in the ability to color the hair so you can put rainbow streaks in the hair or draw smiley faces in the hair and stuff. Like, they added things like that. But there's not actually a lot of choices, especially for females, because they haven't rebuilt their roster of actual content yet. And that's the crux of the problem. You know, there's not a lot of hairstyles, there's not a lot of clothing options, but there's a decent number. Like, hairstyles are the biggest issue, because it's almost all long hair. There's very little short hair. There's one set of little braided-ish pigtails. And for some reason, females can't use male hairstyles the way they could in the past. On top of that, it's buggy as crap. This game launched crazy buggy. To their credit, they released a 1.5 gig patch, which fixed a huge number of bugs, but you might have seen my video, WWE2K16, the struggle with pants is real. Yeah, those pants are still bugged. I tried. It still crashes the game. Like, I think they fixed the hair glitching out, because that happened with, like, a few other things that caused the hair to just go wild. But, yeah, no. Putting a stripe on that specific pair of pants still crashes the game. So they still have a ways to go. Visually, though, it looks very nice. The animation is much smoother. Gameplay-wise, it's a little weird. I really like the Rumble Roses counter. Like, it's definitely slower than Rumble Roses. It's kind of a slow game. It has a ton of goofy mini-games that you play, like, for submissions and holds and pinning and everything. They all have, like, some weird mini-game associated with that. But the way counters work is that it's timing-based. But in the previous game, you could kind of just spam your counters. And they were like, okay, that's a problem. So they fixed that by putting in a counter meter. Like, you get 3 counter stocks. And it refills as you fight rather quickly, I might add. But yeah, like, you can't just sit there countering. You have a limited supply of these. And so it's interesting. It works. But it does turn everything on its head compared to Rumble Roses. Because Rumble Roses, it was all about, you counter punch or you counter strike. And the whole thing was about mix-up. You use strikes in order to throw your opponent off, so that way you could grapple. It was very counter-centric. Here, though, since you have limited counters, and, like, you don't get a lot for countering a strike, it doesn't give you that much of an advantage, I do worry that striking might be too powerful. I made a character named Psycho Selena, who I did put up for download if you're curious, and she's my strongest character, because I gave her a combo chain for just her mash square combo that is way too good. Like, I've tried her out, she's just my best character. And yeah, no, you could just run in there and just maul people with that chain. So I do worry about that. Also, the fact that getting up from being pinned as a minigame is a little bit of a problem. Basically, you have to stop the timer within this wedge, and how tired you are compared to how tired your opponent is determines how big or small the wedges are. But what that means is that if you aren't paying close enough attention, it's really easy to just get pinned, like, really early on just because you botched the minigame. Meanwhile, if you're in the zone and you're doing your one-frame Chun-Li Hyokusen parries, there. If you're in third strike mode and you can get your parries on, if you could do those single frame things, then you're basically unbeatable. If you're in the zone, you can just wake up out of anything. So I do worry that might have been a bad idea. It was a cute concept, but I don't think it quite works out. All in all, the load times are super long. The game is buggy, but it's being patched. Oh yeah, and the netcode is like generic old, like laggy netcode. It's not that impressive. But it is fun. In fact, the customization is like through the roof. Not only can you make custom characters, you can make custom wrestling rings. You can make custom belts, which you can put into your own custom, like, wrestling programs. And there's even, the WWE Universe mode, which was good because there's no story mode for female characters. So I went into this My Universe mode, which is kind of just a semi-randomly generated just bunch of fights thing. And yeah, I fired all the WWE wrestlers and just filled it with all my own divas and just doing a pure diva wrestling promotion thing. And it's super neat. Which, by the way, if you're curious, no, men and women cannot fight in this game. Apparently they could in the older games. Some of the newer ones they can't. This is one of those newer ones where they can't. You cannot play male character versus female character. I agree that that's stupid. I understand why they have this restriction. Excuse me. Kinda, 4:45 a.m. right now. It's, I understand why they have this restriction in real life, but in video games, I think it's kind of stupid. All in all, though, I do think I'm having a blast. I put so many hours into messing around with that game. Oh, one of the other problems. They have super awesome face morphing in the customization. Like you can move the facial parts around individually, then click on them and drag the individual parts of the face, so the face morphing is like super good, but there's no symmetry option. If you want to like move the eyes farther apart or lower, you have to do it individually with no on-screen guides or like numbers or anything. You just have to eyeball it when you're doing custom faces. Then you're tweaking the little things. Basically, your faces are always going to be lopsided. I don't let that deter me, but it is a really, really shit design choice that you can't get any symmetry in there. In fact, I need to say, I think it really shows that each part of the customization is made by a different team. Because, like, some things have numbers that'll guide you, some don't. Some let you use the D-pad and the analog stick, some don't. Everything about the customization works differently from one another. It's very, very odd. But I do think that the game is pretty darn fun to play. I am having a blast with it. It's very enjoyable, but I admit most of why I enjoy it is the sheer amount of things I can customize and how good they look. If you want to make like an actual specific video game female, you will be disappointed by the customization options. Because there's just not enough here to make anything that's really picture perfect. You can get creative, but you won't get anything super satisfying like you could back in 2K14, apparently. But if you just go in there and go, I want to make something that looks cool, maybe have a base concept and just start fiddling around, you can make some incredible looking characters who you can make very fun to play, and it becomes a blast. I've taken a pretty lengthy break from it now, but I put a hefty chunk of hours into it. I was really having fun with that game. So I do think WWE2K16 is pretty fun. Also, as a side note, because of the weird nature of divas and how they can't fight the male characters and most of the focus is on the male characters, I did make a WWE 2K16 Custom Diva community if you want to come in and check it out. Speaking of which, I also made a Game Babble community on PS4. I listed it under One-Chanbara, because initially it wasn't listed under anything, because I was like, well, it's all games. But then I realized there was no One-Chanbara groups, and I was like, Game Babble fan club, One-Chanbara fan club. Same difference. Stuck it on there, got a few One-Chanbara fans. We talked to it. I'm always open to talk One-Chanbara. I really should review it sometimes. Actually, I'm thinking of getting a European PS2. If I do, I'm getting Zombie Hunters and Zombie Zone, as well as like the actually English translated version of All-Star Kakto Matsuri. So, I'm thinking if and when that happens, I might have to, like, instead of just reviewing the games plain, I might do a proper One-Chanbara retrospective. I say after promising so many retrospectives. Anyway, I've now covered all the things I wanted to talk about. Again, sorry I got a little political there with R.Mika's butt, but I fight for what I believe in. I believe in R.Mika's butt. But, I have one more question. I'm sitting here, I'm pondering so many things. There's so much stuff I want to put on the internet and talk about and discuss. I keep thinking about, like, making a thread for them on, like, Reddit, and then I realize, wait a fucking second. Like, where do I put this? Do I put this in our games? I'm like, no, this isn't major game releases. These are just weird observations and shit. I realized that it's a lot of the stuff I used to post on my live journal way back in the day. I realized I haven't posted on the actual Game Babble blog in a good long while. And a lot of that, I posted more on the live journal than the blog because I was able to just link directly to making a new post on live journal, which I cannot do on the blog, on top of the fact that WordPress keeps fucking around with the text editor, making it harder and harder to organize my posts, and it's driving me nuts. But I've been thinking about it, and I was wondering, which do you think would be a better idea? Do you think, A, I should just start posting on my live journal again, even though who the fuck uses live journal, am I right? Or B, do you think I should just start posting my brain farts and weird observations to the Game Babble blog? Because the initial idea, the original reason I separated the blog from the rest was because I was like, I need more professional writing samples so I can pursue my dream of being a professional game reviewer, which, right now would be the best time to do that, but I've given up on that. Now I'm going for biologist, because I realize that I'm not going to make any money reviewing games. It should be a hobby. I shouldn't be beholden to anybody, and I should be able to speak my mind. Like, this whole debacle with what has happened with game journalism makes me realize game journalism is actually too rotten to fix from the inside. It is a complete shit show. I'm not doing a good enough job, like, making myself seem all that great. So screw it. Screw it all. Do you think I should just start posting that to the Game Babble blog? Just start posting my random brain farts? Or do you think I should actually update my live journal instead and keep the Game Babble blog for more professional posts? Let me know what you think if you actually made it this far in the video. Thank you for watching. Wow, this has been a long video. And I will catch you later. See ya.